Fab, lots of people still joining, but I shall, make a start, I think. Hello, everyone. Hi. Just letting people in. Cool, I'll make a start. People can still flow through. Great stuff. Well, thank you for joining us, attendees and panelists. Welcome to Reopening Your Venue with Confidence. So this is the first of our panel discussions with our new brand, Unique Venues of Great Britain. So my name's Becky, for those of you that don't know me. Unique Venues of Great Britain is a collaborative marketing community, and we promote distinctive, alternative and unique venues across the UK. Those of you in Manchester and Leeds will be familiar with Matthew, Jane and I. Unique Venues of Manchester started, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago. And I've come on board over the last couple of years to support with marketing and PR and roll out various different city regions across the UK. So first and foremost, our membership involves a website listing. So we help connect venues and suppliers with event organisers, planners, agencies through various different search options. Now, Matthew and I are very excited to say that our brand new website, uniquevenuesofgreatbritain.co.uk, is live today. We'd love you to go and check it out. We spent a lot of time designing, tweaking, developing. So yeah, please go and check it out, and we'll send the links through after this. Our support, as well as the website listing, includes networking events, presence at trade shows, advertorial opportunities, press releases, and social media coverage. So for anyone that's new to Unique Venues of Great Britain or in a city that we're not established in already, then please do get in touch. We'd love to speak to you, have a conversation, and yeah, tell you more. So we'll send out details off the back of this event, but please feel free to speak to Matthew, Jane and I from Unique Venues of Great Britain. So that's a nice little intro on the brand and the relaunch. Before we go into today's discussion, and bear with me panelists, I will come to you. We've got another panel discussion. So this is the first of our 2-part series, which is Reopening Your Venue Well Equipped. So that's more of the operational side of things. So that is Tuesday the 16th, so 2 weeks today, same time, 3 o'clock. Matthew will be hosting that one, and he's got a list of panelists joining him. So, reopening your venue with confidence. Thank you to all our panelists today. We were just having a conversation, weren't we? It's quite a nice time to do an event following the news of the roadmap, much more positive than, say, this time 10 months ago when the discussions were all quite doom and gloom. Very aware that we've got a long way to go, but we're definitely seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, which is good, which is nice and positive for the economy as a whole, but obviously the events industry is part of that. So the roadmap's been announced. So obviously 17th of May is looking pretty strong for smaller events under 30, and then the big date is 21st of June, which may or may not move, but we're getting there for larger events. Recently, again, we were discussing on the call previous to this, there's been some really good news and data and press around the positivity and the confidence within buyers. Glasgow Convention Bureau reported 28 new conferences in the past, I think it was 11 months, bringing an economic value to the city of 84 million, which is pretty impressive. And then we've seen agencies and corporates see a huge spike of new inquiries off the back of last Monday's announcement. So yeah, really positive. So we're in a good position for this conversation, and we want to help everyone on the call who is a venue, a supplier, basically strengthen their position going into the reopening phase from a venue perspective. So thank you panelists for joining us. Jennifer Jensen is Head of Business Tourism at Marketing Liverpool. Becky is Northern Associate for Selling Savvy, and Ryan Doyle is Group Director of Sales at Switch Hospitality Management. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. If I can do a little round the room or round the virtual room, for you to kind of introduce yourself, as in obviously who you are, but what your position is at the moment in terms of navigating through the role that you've got on your plate and the industry, and where we are, where you are as a business currently. So Jennifer, I will hand over to you first. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, do you know, that phrase, it appears everywhere, doesn't it? There's always going to be someone going to do it. Well, at least it's been done early on anyway. So I'm Jennifer Jensen, and yes, I'm having difficulty still with virtual events. So can't wait for live events to return. So at Marketing Liverpool, we are the destination management organisation for Liverpool. And my role within that is looking after the convention bureau. So obviously attracting new conference business to the city and supporting events when they do arrive. So from our perspective, at the moment, we are working and have been for the last few months on a destination recovery plan and strategy. So a short-term strategy for, you know, kind of the next 2 years, trying to see us through how we actually navigate this roadmap and beyond, and what that looks like for us. I mean, a big part of our business is working with our partners. So all of our venues, hotels and suppliers, and supporting them in their recovery as well. So we've done this all the way through lockdown, and that's one of our key roles, is really making sure that we keep Liverpool as a destination high in the minds of buyers, that they know that we're there, what we can offer, and that we're ready, and we can make sure that those businesses are ready for when they can welcome guests back into the city as well. So there's quite, as everyone probably at the moment, there's an awful lot going on behind the scenes in destinations and in venues, hotels. Everyone's trying to get ready. So hopefully today we can have a really good discussion about how that can look and how we can help each other.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Becky?
Hi everybody. Thanks for having me here today, Becky. Becky with a CK instead of Becky with a CC, just in case you get mixed up between. So I am the Northern Associate for Selling Savvy. We are specialists in increasing sales, revenue and conversion rates in the hospitality and events industry. And usually we do that by delivering lots of lovely in-person workshops for venues and hotels, suppliers, etc. But we have pivoted, the word of the year, this last year, and we've been doing quite a lot of online workshops, challenges, mentoring, and we are just helping as much as we can, helping people to get ready for reopening, whether that be rebuilding their sales teams in terms of giving them the confidence and training. We were just talking about hybrid events before we came on, so getting people sort of genned up on how to sell hybrid events, just generally helping people in ways that we can, delivering whatever training and mentoring that they need to reopen effectively with a bang, you know, and like you say, to take advantage of all these lovely inquiries that are starting to drip through now, which is really exciting.
Great stuff. Yeah, and Ryan, do you want to tell us a bit about where you are?
Hi everyone, Becky, thank you for having me today. Really excited to be part of this discussion. I am Group Director of Sales for Switch Hospitality Management. We have currently got 2 properties in Birmingham. We have the Park Regis Birmingham, which is quite a large events property, and we also have the Holiday Inn Express Birmingham South, over near towards Birmingham Airport. Both the properties have been open throughout the pandemic, so we've had a huge focus on the key worker essential travel. What we have found, obviously, since Boris's announcement last week, which was greatly welcomed by the industry, there really has been a lot more leads, a lot more inquiries starting to drip through. So it's really been the focus for the next few weeks on getting those converted and actually bringing a strong Q4 for the events world.
Great, yeah, nice. Thank you. So we have got a few questions kind of planned out, but I encourage all attendees to use the chat. What we'll do is any questions that you throw in, we'll come back to those kind of towards the end. But we'd love this to be as interactive as possible. So please make comments and pop your own questions for any of our panelists. So first of all, buyer confidence. So have you got any evidence, or have you had any conversations where you've got kind of proof that buyer confidence is up and people are placing inquiries, but also, you know, are people paying deposits at the moment, or is that just not a thing? I guess Ryan, probably venue side to you, what would you say about that?
Yeah, definitely. There's certainly a lot of confidence in the market for September onwards. Anything prior to September is very much sort of leisure driven, local banqueting, weddings, but in terms of corporate conferencing, September, October, November certainly seem very strong. We are currently flexing out cancellations in terms of conditions as much as possible. We are sticking with the government guidelines in terms of if an event cannot go ahead due to government legislation, then we will cancel the event free of charge and return any deposits. That's really giving customers a lot of confidence in the market, knowing they're not going to go through the issue last year when people were questioning force majeure clauses and actually looking at whether COVID was covered in the pandemic clause, which in most cases it wasn't. I think that there is still a lot of resistance to sign contracts for blue chip companies and blue chip organisations. There seems to be a question over when will it be safe to send people through to conferences. Now, the vaccine programme very much has given confidence that from the 31st of July, the majority of people will be vaccinated. I think that is the key number. Until everyone in the UK has been vaccinated, that's when we will have a signature on a contract. The inquiries and the demand are certainly there. Where we are struggling, I think most hotels are finding the same, is that conversion, that signature on a contract. There definitely is the demand. It's just getting the contract signed. And I think for us, we're quite fortunate that we've remained open the whole time. So all of our COVID practices have been in place, and we actually have case studies of how we've implemented them and customer feedback from them. So for us, that's been great feedback, and we can present that back out to give some more confidence in the market.
Yeah, great. And obviously you're putting resource into converting those contracts. You know, it's a great thing to be able to do. From a destination point of view, Jennifer, how do you feel, you know, that venues or that your members can help develop that confidence within corporate buyers?
I mean, I think that the key thing really is safety. So making sure that you are safe to reopen. So there are quite a few properties that won't have been open very much at all over the last 12 months, maybe very briefly last summer. And it's making sure that, you know, anything they have in place, the client knows about. So it's being really transparent about what you're doing, and really clear about how it's all set out, how your staff have been trained appropriately, what measures will be in place and what your client can expect. So you manage their expectations is really important. I have heard from a few clients that some agencies in particular are starting to put their own checklists together about what they expect from a venue. So it's you need to be ahead of the game, I guess, is really trying to cover all bases, and potentially looking at, you know, an accreditation like AIM Secure from the MIA, where it's a third-party accreditation that can help you align what your organization is already doing and making sure you're not missing anything. But I think, you know, initially you've got to be, that's the basics, isn't it? You've got to be safe and have all the procedures in place that are going to keep clients confident in the first place. But yes, I mean, that's what we're there as a destination, is to try and support all of our partners, our venues, hotels and suppliers, to make sure they've got access to all the information that they need. Any support we can give them, that's where we come into play.
Great. And from your perspective, Liverpool, has there been an increase in corporate bookings and conferences?
I think very much like Ryan, there are inquiries coming through, but reluctance to sign contracts. So it's still very early days. People are starting to talk about events. September, definitely, that's when the confidence seems to be from our perspective. Anything in that late spring, early summer is still very tentative, because, you know, those dates can still shift. I think it's being conscious of that, isn't it? That none of the dates are set in stone. But it does seem that, particularly, I can give you a couple of examples of big conferences that were due to take place in May, June, when it's pretty busy. They had kind of moved to September, but still weren't ready to commit to that. And now they are ready. They're coming to us saying, right, we need help with accommodation. We need to organise a dinner. We need to do X, Y, Z. for events in September. So, and they've only shifted a few months along the way, and they've got a lot more confidence than they would have had were they going to run their event in June.
Yeah, fab. And then Becky, from a sales perspective, have you spoken to clients recently, and how does the outlook look, and how can we develop that confidence further so that we can get the contract over the line, or get the contract over the line when the time is right?
Yeah, I think our clients are saying very similar things to what Ryan and Jennifer are saying in terms of September onwards. Seems to be this kind of I don't know, this golden month that we're all looking for. And I think, same as what Ryan said, I think one of the things that's changed that is the confidence that the vaccine has brought. I remember kind of like chatting to a client of mine probably about 6 months ago, in between the kind of time when we tried to reopen again and had to close again, and the confidence to book just wasn't there like it is now. And I think the vaccine has got a lot to, has put a lot towards that, definitely. What Ryan says, basically, flexibility, I think as a salesperson, to be able to offer that flexibility, I think at the moment is key. Because we need to be able to reassure people, if they do sign on that dotted line, they're not going to obviously lose loads of money, and they're not going to have any other options. So to me, that's the big thing that we need to be instilling into our salespeople. But I also think, the sales teams, a lot of them have been away, apart from some of the key players like Ryan, have been away, and they've been furloughed. And I remember what it was like when I came back off maternity leave, let alone sort of like nearly a whole year of being away from the business. And I think Jennifer touched on this already, but it's kind of looking at, we'll need to retrain them, to give them the confidence in order to pass on the right information to the clients. So many things that have changed. The competitors might have changed. They might need to know about hybrid events, what can work capacity-wise, strategy, etc. So we need to sort of retrain them, so that instills a confidence in the booker when they're talking to them as well.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. So much has changed. It'll be nearly a year and a half by the time that some venues have been closed, and that's so overwhelming for some people, and for anyone really. And I guess the customer journey is now thrown out askew. So from a customer journey perspective, what changes are now in place, and what can we do that's different than last time? Anyone that wants to answer that one, really, I guess. Ryan or Becky, in terms of customer journey.
Go on, Ryan.
I think the most important thing for us is to really focus on all the time that we spent implementing our PRB clean. So P clean was put into Park Regis, and it was all about our enhanced cleanliness, all about additional check times, reducing touch points. And for what I think, just looking on social media and LinkedIn, I think hotel groups and venues were fantastic at posting this in the first lockdown. Hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're overcoming COVID. I feel like in the last 6 months, it's kind of fizzled out. And actually now, when we're trying to get contracts across the line, it's becoming more and more important. Once COVID finishes, I still think this enhanced cleaning protocol will be a huge thing within the industry. We're enhancing even further in our AI and tech bots and chat bots and WhatsApp communication, whereas if you're an event organizer, you can request additional tea and coffee through an app. You can request AV support through an app. You don't have to spend that time hunting out someone to have a face-to-face conversation. You can request all of this online, and it makes things a lot more streamlined. Actually, from a point perspective, it's cutting down on those touch points. So I think it's really important to keep focusing on that. As I say, a lot of hotels done it fantastically with the first lockdown, and it seems it's just fizzled away. We need to keep shouting about cleanliness, and the focus on cleanliness is going to become more and more important now to the customer.
Yeah, and I would then, just off the back of that, from a marketing perspective, that whole journey, it's changed, but now buyers, conference buyers are looking, they're researching, they've got more time than ever before. Now is the time to say those messages, to reiterate the point about cleanliness, to shout about how amazing your venue is. Now is the time to kind of put in the resource to marketing, PR, social. And I know, Becky, you know plenty about that as well, because you do social media for multiple businesses.
Well, actually, it's funny you should say that. And Ryan, what Ryan just said, I'm not going to name names, but I attended a webinar last week with a bunch of social media experts. I wasn't on the panel, I was listening. And one of the people actually turned around and said that we need to stop talking about safety in COVID because it's just not sexy enough. And I was just like, whoa, not sure I agree with that. I agree with Ryan and what you've said, Becky. I think, yeah, people are excited and want to come back, but they do still need that reassurance to make sure that, you know, you are going the extra mile. And I have actually stayed at the Park Regis during sort of in the middle of the COVID, wasn't it, Ryan? Kind of in between when we were allowed. And they have got a few extra measures. And those are the things when you are there as a, you know, as a customer, that reassure you, those extra bits and pieces that you see. And I think we'll probably find that there's going to be certain corporates that insist that maybe certain measures are in place anyway. So I think I disagree with the person I'm talking about. I think, yes, it shouldn't be everything that we're shouting about and communicating about. Obviously, we want to have a fabulous experience and talk about that as well. But I think it still is important to talk about it and to take people on that journey, you know, maybe show them a video walkthrough of what it will look like now when they do come to your venue and the extra things that you've got in place. And I think Jennifer mentioned earlier, sort of showing them expectations maybe of what a room might look like now and what that journey might be, and just giving reassurances all the way through.
I think it does boil down to being flexible. Is, you know, it's having your own measures in place, but actually the client may have their own expectations about what they want, and actually it might give you ideas on how you can improve what you're doing for future events. But I think it's just having that conversation very early on as to, you know, you're working on this together. It's a partnership between you and your client. And the only way it's going to be successful is if you both work together to make sure each other is happy and confident with the venue, with everything that's happening in the property.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Jennifer. And I think when we're asking people on the initial sales inquiry, I think we need to get a bit more touchy-feely and maybe ask people, how do you feel about coming back? You know, engage what they feel and their company feels, and answer those sorts of questions, as well as the kind of standard questions that we would normally have when we're taking an inquiry. Sorry to butt in there.
No, and just, I suppose, to add to that, sorry, is obviously you're dealing with the client who's booking the event, but they've got to go and reassure their delegates as well. So it's there may be different needs for those delegates than for the client. So it's bearing that in mind, that they may be bombarding you with lots of questions about how you're managing your space, but that information will need to be filtered down to make sure all of those delegates are aware, because they're the ones who will experience everything firsthand. So you as a venue have some responsibility to make sure that that message gets passed right on to them of what's expected of them, how they expect to behave in your venue as well, because it works both ways, doesn't it? The venue can put all the measures in place, but you want those delegates to be safe and adhere to those rules. So it's getting that right, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think what we're saying is, not only has the market changed, but the customer perspective has changed, the expectations have changed. And I think my stance on that is that when we're marketing and doing PR for venues, we're thinking, yes, we're selling to yes, this is around corporate events, but actually as people we're all we've not all been trapped and not been able to go to anything for almost a year. So it's understanding that actually our clients, whether it's a corporate or leisure, will all have these kind of worries, concerns, many different emotions involved and attached to going to an event or what have you. So it's really finding out what your customer wants, what the customer feels, and I think, like we say, the leisure side of things will pick up. The staycation opportunities are huge for kind of June, July, September, which is great. So let's not use that as a practice, because that's a huge revenue opportunity for those businesses that are in that space, but to find out where buyers are at in terms of their expectations, because yeah, we're all going through this journey together, I guess. That would be my stance on it.
I just had one thing to add really on customer
Yeah.
journey, is that the destination is, you know, it's not just the venue. The client has actually got to get there. So actually it might be the traveling there that they're worried about, or getting around the city when they arrive. So for us as destinations, it's, you know, we're trying to come up with great ways to reassure people about how to get here and get around once they're here. You know, for Liverpool, we're in a great position because we're a walkable city. So you don't need to get on any public transport. You can, you know, you can walk from the hotel to venue to wherever you need to be very, very easily. So it's for those cities where it's not that simple, maybe it's thinking and working with your destination or your convention bureau to what the message is to people. And, you know, are there bikes, are there free bikes to hire to get around, just to put people's mind at rest that once they get there, they don't have to maybe get on public transport. There are alternatives to use as well.
Yeah, and that's around being creative as well, you know, not just thinking straight down the middle. Becky, I've got another question for you around sales, because you touched on it earlier about sales team confidence. So yeah, what can we do there to all these things that we've just discussed to kind of build trust with clients, to help reassure, to get the right messaging in front of them? Yeah, how can we help with confidence in our sales team? What steps?
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to one of the things that I've mentioned already about the retraining side of things. Like I previously alluded to, I remember when I came back from maternity leave, I was like, I couldn't remember even how to log into my emails, let alone everything else. And so much has changed. So I think we need, as a venue, we need to make sure that we are as open with our sales teams as possible and include them in as many conversations as possible and get their opinions and feedback from the get-go, really, and find out how they're feeling about returning back to work in a world that looks very different maybe to when they kind of went on to furlough in the first place. So it's investing in spending the time with them, you know, having those one-to-ones, getting their opinions, getting them involved in decisions as much as you can. And then retraining them. And it goes back to something that Matthew and I did on one of our Savvy Says recently, talking about sales and ops. I think that relationship is going to have to be even stronger now. So it's spending time with ops and having a look at how the new layouts look, how the new capacities look, how the customer journey through events is going to look, so they can then have the confidence to pass that on and sell that on, set expectations, which Jennifer mentioned already, be as open and as honest with our customers as we can, but giving the sales team the tools to do that. I mean, the strategy may have changed, so the revenue team may need to relook at that, because the capacities aren't as big now, so it might not be as, you know, as stringent with the old minimum numbers, etc., that we used to have. And things have changed. We might need to show them how to sell hybrid events. What do they mean? And I know, Jennifer, you've got the hybrid. You have to remind me, the core hybrid cities.
The hybrid event solutions through the core cities. Yeah. That's
it, that you guys are doing, which I know is really helpful from that side of things as well. And we do courses around it. So it's retraining, it's involving them, it's giving them all the tools that they need to feel confident when they're selling, because if you don't feel confident, I think that kind of comes across, doesn't it? And it's going back to giving them the flexibility so that they've got the ownership to be flexible if they need to be, that they understand the measures that are in place. So there is going to be quite a lot of kind of retraining and looking at things, and don't underestimate that, you know, don't kind of like just chuck them in at the deep end and go, there you go, get on with it. We need to, it's almost like you know, like a plan like you have when you start a job. We kind of like need that now when they're coming back into the role, really. It's that important.
Yeah, like a re-induction process.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Thanks, Becky.
No worries. Ryan, what's your stance on that? You know, team members coming back, how will they feel?
Yeah, definitely. I think, Becky, you hit the nail on the head there. It's confidence in what they're currently selling. You know, all of that commercial team are now back within the business full time, which is fantastic. And we want them to be inclusive as possible. Their biggest anxiety about acquisition has changed. What's the new capacity? What is the client expectation? Every client is asking for something completely different. As much as we've gone out there with flexible TCs, we are trying to bespoke it to every single client, because what one client thinks is an acceptable T's and C's is completely different to another client. You know, one client looking at social distancing still for events next year, other clients are saying pack them in as much as possible, so we're back to, you know, so it feels back to normal. And it's really hard trying to find balance. I think, again, to mirror what Becky said, it's really giving them the confidence to know that they can make a decision and empower them in that. We've taken our team around with the ops team to show them the new layouts to really increase that synergy. If a client wants something specific, then they're happy to speak to the operations team and say, can this work? We've really tried to increase our lines of communication. And now we're looking at the bidding process for next year. It's something that our sales team wouldn't necessarily be involved in, but we're actually asking them to come in, sit on budget meetings, you know, asking them, what is your opinion? What is your feedback from clients? And because they're now getting that sense of involvement, it's almost giving them the buzz that they want to be out there proactively speaking to clients and actually asking the right questions. So confidence and empowerment, I think, are the two biggest things that we can instill at the moment.
Yeah, great. I love that. Confidence and empowerment. And in terms of spaces, capacities, how has that changed for any venues? You know, I know, Ryan, you said that you've kind of touched on that, but anyone else that's changed for venues, and you've had, you know, clients' opinions differ, you know, some say shut them in, some say they've got to be social distance. Jennifer, how are your venues dealing with that, or members dealing with those kind of questions around capacities? And
I think for the venues, they've got to push for the social distancing if that's what the law is at the moment, whether the client wants to cram them all in or not. You've got to do whatever is right at the time. We did actually have a pilot event in December in Liverpool, which I think it was for around 250 people. And the way that they actually did mandatory testing, so you couldn't come into the event unless you could prove you'd had a negative test result within 24 hours prior to the event. And that worked really well. I mean, they did turn a couple of people away because they were positive, they couldn't go in. So they obviously didn't attend the event. And I know there was a bit more analysis done beyond that, and things obviously have changed since December, but I know that testing is still a big opportunity that the government are looking into. They are looking at doing pilots on mass testing, quick results, you know, all the different options to try and get a quick result. We were really fortunate in Liverpool that we did the mass testing pilot, and you could get a result within around 30 minutes, which was great. Managing that on a large scale, that will be difficult. So I think, you know, getting something much quicker in place, combined with the vaccines being rolled out quickly and efficiently, those kind of things will help give the venues confidence in terms of managing capacity in their venue. So, you know, I guess each venue is going to be slightly different. And particularly for unique venues, there are a whole different set of challenges around capacity. You know, if you're a museum that's open to the public and you've got people booking slots to come in, you might need more space for queuing. And actually, have you lost some of your event space for the moment because it's being used for something else? So there will be real variations from venue to venue as to how they manage that social distancing element and extra space being needed for other things.
And with you touched on there, the vaccine as well, vaccine passports. How do you think that will kind of pan out, and whether people will have to show that proof of that they've had the vaccine? It's quite a mixed thing on that at the moment.
It's a really interesting one because it's not mandatory. So I suppose in my mind, that means that you can't insist that somebody has to have a vaccine certificate to do something. I don't know. I mean, for this event that we did in December, it was mandatory to have a negative test result to come in, and that was the decision of the organisers for that. It's very, very difficult to know exactly how that will work if people aren't. What happens if your staff aren't vaccinated? You know, will it be mandatory for venue and hotel staff to be vaccinated? At the moment, it's not, is it? So how will companies manage that? We just don't know at the moment. But I think from a client's perspective, you know, we were on the Meet England event. That was a virtual event run by Visit Britain a couple of weeks ago. And that was with international buyers from the US and Europe. And the common thing that was coming out was that international buyers are amazed at how quick we've managed to roll out this vaccine program. And actually that's going very much in our favor in growing confidence. So the more people who are vaccinated, the better. It's just how that's managed, you know, on the ground level, I guess.
Yeah, great. Anything on that, Ryan or Becky, on vaccine passports? Just because I know that's had sparked a few conversations. If not, don't worry.
I think what Jennifer says is right. My personal opinion, it's going to be so hard to logistically adhere to, isn't it? It's like she said, it's you know, it's okay people having this vaccine passport, but then if certain members of the team haven't got it, or if there's agency members that come in, they got it, it sounds like a bit of a logistical nightmare, but I don't have any experience in that area, I'm afraid.
I think we probably reinforce exactly the same. You know, we don't know, because at the moment, like we've said, it's not law, it's not mandatory. And what we are doing is we have got an essential client who is still having very small meetings with us, and they have asked the staff that are servicing that meeting, can they be tested? So we are using quick flow, lateral flow testing of staff members that are servicing that event. So is that something we're looking at for the bigger picture? Potentially, but I think with the vaccine passport being so tentative at the moment, we're kind of just taking each day as it comes when it comes to that.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I guess I mean everyone is, but it's a case of getting ahead of clients as well, because clients will be thinking about all these things and how can we kind of preempt what they're going to ask us as venues. One thing that obviously has come about massively over the last 12 months is technology, of course, and us all being on Zoom calls 10 times a day, but also hybrid events, and you know, the increase of hybrid events in venues and studios. You know, what a hybrid event is so vast. You know, it could be something really low key, and it could be a huge conference with various different elements to it. So how has hybrid events, you know, affected you guys? What's your stance? How can venues maximize on the demand? Yeah, to any of you really, I guess one by one, how, you know, what's your stance on hybrid events? How can venues maximize on this?
Well, I'm happy to go first, only because we launched an initiative through the core cities, which is called Hybrid Event Solutions. And this is Convention Bureau from across England collaborating and supporting each other to allow events to happen. So say, for example, a large event, say 500 people, normally happens in Liverpool. Perhaps the client is thinking, I can't make everyone travel to Liverpool. Maybe there'll be restrictions around numbers in venue. What we could do is have a multi-hub style event. So some people dialing in online, but then maybe hubs in Liverpool, London, Newcastle, for example. And the way this project works is, because all the convention bureaus are connected to each other anyway, that we then collaborate to make it simple for the client. So whoever's booking that event can work just with one convention bureau and liaise with the other destinations who will find the right venue for them to hold their event in that particular hub format with one proposal that goes to the client. So we're all trying to work together to enable the events to happen, so that they don't just go fully virtual, which is the other option for the client. If they don't want to hold that big event live, do they just go virtual? The whole hybrid question, the inquiries that we are seeing at the moment are asking for a hybrid element, that they expect, say, 100 people on site, but actually another 100 virtually, and they need the venue or the hotel to have that set up in place. And we do have some local suppliers, which in every destination there'll be local AV companies who will have pivoted from doing lots of live events and concerts to now being experts in delivering these kind of studio formats and setups, they can go to venues and do that as well. You know, it's an interesting one. As a destination, we want as many people as possible to come to the city. So, you know, we don't want them dialing in and only seeing it online. We want them to come and experience the city, because that's really important for us. It's important for the delegate to experience the event live. You know, we know all the things that we miss. We miss the networking, we miss the coffee breaks, we miss dinners and drinks at the bar, and all those great conversations that you have and the connections that you make. It's very difficult to recreate that in a hybrid event. So you know, ultimately that's what we want. We want back to live events, but we are there to help support our venues. If you have inquiries and you don't want to invest in that, you know, you don't need to invest in all that equipment. There are suppliers out there who've got all of that. The key thing that venues need to have, if a client wants it, is great connectivity, because as we know, if you lose that, then the hybrid element of your event is gone. If your internet connection is unstable, and that's the key thing that I've pulled out from conversations with clients who are looking at hybrid, is the venue has got to have the best connectivity. That's the most important thing. But yeah, it's a very interesting one, hybrid. I don't think it's going to go away. We had an inquiry for 2026 for an international conference who wanted hybrid for 2026. So you know, we're having to put that in our bids for big international associations that far in advance as to, you know, what we're doing, and they want case studies around it and all kinds for that particular one. So I don't think it's going away, but obviously we all just want live events to come back as soon as possible.
Yeah, the marketplace has changed, because you're right, hybrid events won't go away. There's a huge demand for them, which will continue, but yeah, they're not the same as live events. And yeah, on that, like you say, people are booking for 2026, they're not going to go away. So now is the time to talk about it in your marketing and speak about the connectivity and speak about, yeah, the USPs of hosting a hybrid event at your venue. Becky, do you want to touch on hybrid?
Yeah, sure. I completely wholeheartedly agree with you, Jennifer. I cannot wait to get back to real events, both my selling savvy hat on and actually delivering in person, you know, actually seeing people in the room and chatting to them and going for the after training drinks at the bar. Jennifer, definitely. But I also agree with you, Becky. I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's here to stay in some shape or form. I think nothing replaces live events for me, but there are some big benefits to venues if they do embrace it. And we've been working with quite a few independent venues, helping them to understand it a little bit better and how to sell it both proactively and reactively. I think some people are a little bit nervous. In fact, I think the opening line of one of my workshops that I did was "Don't panic," because that's the first thing. As soon as somebody says, "We want a hybrid event," don't panic, it's all right. Because like you said, like Jennifer said, you can partner with some great AV companies, and we've got some preferred partners that we work with that do all of that bit for you. So as long as you kind of know the basics and know how to sell it to a certain degree, they can do all of that part for you. But benefits for the venue are can be quite big, to be honest, because one of the things I think, and just something you just said, Jennifer, just kind of rang true with me there as well, is that it can be used as kind of like a backup for converting an event. So it can be like, well, you know, sign on the dotted line. If for some reason guidelines changed, we can revert back to a hybrid kind of solution for you, and we've got the contacts for that if we need to. So hopefully that will help to instill that confidence in those people that are booking, that in some shape or form we've got their back, and they can still have a good event. We want it to be in real life, really, but the next best thing is to have some of it, and to have some of it in our venues. Well, that's my opinion anyway. I know everyone's got a very different opinion on it, so it's interesting to have this kind of chat and little debate.
I mean, hybrid format's new for clients as well, though, so you know, we're all riding this wave. If we can, as venues, get on top of their concerns, their expectations, and then market to them clearly and precisely what exactly we offer, then yeah, they should marry up and it should, you know, be a nice relationship. Kate, by the way, Kate from Selling Savvy reiterates what you both said about AV suppliers can offer dedicated connectivity packages to support venues. So don't let concerns about day-to-day connectivity put you off. That's what she's saying to venues. Ryan, do you want to say your stance on hybrid?
Yeah, so I'm probably a little bit different, if I'm honest. We haven't really focused huge and wholeheartedly on our hybrid proposition. For us and our business model, looking at the Park Regis Hotel, is very much based upon 24-hour residential business. What we were finding, hybrid business is predominantly one-day events or maybe two-day events that doesn't necessarily have the residential bedroom element. And really for us, that is where we want to take all of our business, all based down the route of a 24-hour residential rate. I think for us, we spent a lot of time speaking to our clients, especially in the first lockdown, and really understanding where they want to go, whether they do virtual, whether they do hybrid, or whether they're waiting for in-person face-to-face. The fact really was they're either going to do one or the other. There was a couple of clients that wanted to solely focus on virtual until they could get back to face-to-face. There was a lot of clients that purely wanted to focus and wait until face-to-face. I think the perception out there was that hybrid or virtual would be alternative and actually a great opportunity to start cost saving in event calendars. And actually, when clients looked into it, they found it was probably as expensive as an in-person event. So for us, you know, we're not experts in that field. We've almost kind of took a bit of a step back, and we want to focus on in-person events. That said, we haven't had any client feedback that has prohibited us to take an event because we haven't got a virtual or a hybrid offering. But at the same time, if a client says it is something they specifically want, then we do have an AV company that we can work with for that. I think we are probably being very optimistic and hoping that by the end of the year, if not the start of next year, that it will be all about face-to-face and in-person events. So slightly different perception, but I think for those larger event centres, then yes, it works fantastically well. For us, with a maximum capacity of 300, we almost want to focus on what we do, which is face-to-face.
Yeah, no, that's why I wanted your stance on that, because yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. I mean, the scope for hybrid is huge. The opportunity is huge to make on there. But you're right. Like when we did UBM Expo last year, do not underestimate the resource needed to deliver. There is so much that goes into it. Great. Okay, so I've got some questions flowing in. So because I'm aware we've only got 10 minutes left. So if I can plow through these questions and ask panelists, that'd be fab. We've had someone, not actually anonymous, but what do you think are the fundamental changes that sales teams need to be aware of? I guess that's in the reopening process.
I think we've probably touched on most of these things already, haven't we? I think they need to be aware of your competitors now. Have they changed? Sadly, obviously, we've seen some venues having to close or to partially close. Are they offering things that they didn't used to offer? You know, maybe they've got a super all singing, all dancing studio now that is competition to you guys. I think they need to be aware of, obviously, alongside the operational team, what the capacities now look like, and physically walk through what that looks like so they understand it really well. They need to be looking at the strategy alongside the revenue team and looking at maybe the DDR rates. Not know if it's died a death at the moment, but it might need tweaking a little bit. So might need to be looking at other packages, room hire with added extras, especially if we're looking at a hybrid solution, because that might not work with regards to the F&B side of things. I think we need to, Matthew mentioned in the comments as well about how sales teams are feeling. And I think we need to be doing some work around not just boosting their confidence, but their motivation as well, around things, and re-looking at their what would have been their targets as such. I think that those kind of like parameters, at least for this sort of shorter term, need to be completely re-looked at. And I think that we need to be looking at maybe completely different styles of KPIs than what we used to before. You know, things have changed so much. So yeah, there's all sorts of areas that we need to be looking at with our sales teams, probably tons more as well. I'm sure Ryan's got some more to add in potentially.
I think, like you say, the world has completely changed. And I think, like you said, the world's completely changed. You know, sales teams were so KPI focused, face-to-face appointment focused, and we really need to sit back and pivot that, and actually how we monitor a pipeline isn't necessarily through a KPI or a face-to-face appointment.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking as well, Ryan. And also I think they need to learn how they can do virtual appointments at the moment if they need to. You know, yes, like real life events, face-to-face appointments is what we want to be doing and I want to be doing. But, you know, how can you do a virtual show round? How can you do a virtual appointment? How can you demonstrate what you are going to be offering virtually on your social platforms, on your other email marketing channels, that kind of thing as well?
Yeah, Natalie has touched on that. She says, how do we think communicating with our clients will now differ? Will we have more digital ways rather than face-to-face? Do we need to investigate communication methods for the new normal? And I think you've just touched on it there. It's virtual show rounds, which many venues are doing anyway, but putting more out on socials, more out through digital platforms, email, to showcase your venue and have those conversations.
Just to add into that, really, in terms of digital focus, I mean, I know me personally, I don't think I'd ever had a video meeting with a client, with anybody, until we went into lockdown. And I think that will become a lot more normal, because actually, you know, people will there'll be a variety of ways that you connect. You'll talk to them on the phone, by email, and you might do a video call, and you'll see them in person, face to face. But it doesn't mean that they all have, you know, you have to go all the time in person. It means potentially you can keep in touch more often. And with, you know, and video calls, you get more of a connection than just a normal telephone call. So actually, will that help strengthen relationships potentially?
I agree completely with that, Jennifer, just butting in. I totally agree with that. I think all it's doing is giving us more options rather than it necessarily replacing things. Certainly from my perspective, I've been able to get to build much better relationships with my clients by saying, shall we Zoom? It's the next best thing to being in person. I always used to say, pick up the phone, but now I think the next best thing actually is to Zoom, even though we're all getting a bit Zoom tired. If we can't, or, you know, we may not have the time necessarily to always meet in person. So this gives us that option, which I think is, again, I think that's around to stay as well.
Yeah, which is crazy because this option was actually always there, wasn't it? Or it has been for the last 5 to 10 years. But we were all too scared to get on a video call because it felt weird and awkward. And now it's, yeah, you do a few a day.
You have to do your makeup as well, which is a nightmare, obviously.
I mean, it's particularly good for international clients who may only ever come over to see your venue once, you know, if they're booking far in advance for a major international conference, especially, you know, from a destination perspective, you may only ever meet that client in person once before they have their event. And the rest of the time, pretty much everything was usually done by email, not even by phone, you know, for those internationals. And actually now, I think that will help develop much stronger relationships with those international clients, and you'll be able to bring in more people as well. So, you know, the hotel, maybe the PCO is based somewhere else, you know, everyone can actually talk to each other without everyone having to fly several times a year to come and meet in person. So I think that's really, really useful.
Yeah, and Fran has just touched on 360 tours. So again, 360 tours were around prior to COVID, but I think they'll be much more used and much more, you know, sent to clients and bespoke tours done. And 360 tours are a great way to show people around. And if there are any, there are a huge number of photographers who will be grateful for the work, and also a great content to put on socials as well with click-throughs to 360 tours. I'm just reading through some of the comments and questions. So Simon from Stoller Hall, hi Simon. For us, there's been a really positive side to the hybrid model, and that we've been able to use them to reach audiences that aren't traditionally in our catchment area. So we're planning to promote these services to clients, especially for events and international feel, even when the new normal returns. So yeah, that's positive for hybrid. And yes, as Matthew says, the next event is ways of collaborating to deliver hybrid. So that's more on the operational side of hybrid events, but that's Matthew's panel discussion on the 16th, and he's popped the link in the chat. I'm just seeing if there's any more questions, and then we'll kind of wrap things up. Amy has asked a question. Are there any apps or technologies that Ryan would recommend to reduce contact between the client and venue for ordering? Any advice would be much appreciated.
So we've looked at what we can integrate into our PMS, our property management system as a whole. So we've not necessarily just looked at a management app, we've actually looked at it from a whole systems piece. So we are currently looking at how our integrated key lock system works, so to enable to give contactless check-in, contactless F&B ordering, contactless event concierge services. So it's hard because everything is going through our PMS system. We're currently working with a company to create something quite new. I would love to be able to say the company name, but because it's a brand new piece of software, I don't think I'm allowed to shout about who we're working with. But it is something that we will be launching, hopefully within the next couple, as it's giving us time to sit back and look at every single touch point within our business and how we can drive that forward with technology.
Great, thank you, Ryan. I've got one more question and then I'll just wrap things up. So this is a question from Fran. In terms of cancellation, what if a client has to cancel because of self-isolation or because they have COVID rather than any government legislation or restrictions forcing the venue to close? Do you go for a full refund, part refund, or no refund? That is a tricky one. I'm guessing it depends what's in the contract, but does anyone have any experience in this one? Venue side, or
I think if the venue is closed and the venue is unable to service the event, then under a force majeure contract, obviously depending on the in-depth conversation, but under a force majeure contract, you can't service the event, so the client should be entitled to a refund. If the client is cancelling it because they've had to self-isolate, it's a very tricky one. For us, we will always do cancellations based upon government guidance, as opposed to a client having to self-isolate or a client having to decide the event. It's something that I would probably say would need to be negotiated at the time of the contract stage. Not really a yes or no answer for that. It's so bespoke.
I was going to say, but I guess it's really bespoke to the venue, to the client, isn't it? All sorts of things to take into consideration, like how loyal they are and how big a corporate client they are to you and what other business they bring you and all sorts of, I don't think there's a one brush kind of answer to those things, is there?
Yeah. No, and as a buyer, it would be imperative to have adequate insurance for whatever event you're organising, and whatever. I know insurance is a big, difficult subject at the moment, and whether what's going to be covered in the future for event insurance. But if you had to cancel an event because of that, because of self-isolation, or you've got fewer people attending, or there is there's some reason that's not government legislation, where does that sit in terms of event insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you to everyone that's popped their questions in. Thank you to our panel. Is there anything that any of you guys on the panel want to add or want to say? If not, that's fine.
I think the only thing that I wanted to say that I've not really got across, apart from thank you, yes, is on your social media platforms. I think at this time, it's really great to be taking people on the journey as to what your journey is at the moment with you. So whatever you're doing, whatever you're feeling to get ready for reopening, the plans you're making, the changes you're making to your venues, the training you're doing, the measures you're putting in place, that kind of thing. What will it look like when people visit, etc.? I think to me, that is something that you want to be getting across on your socials quite a lot at the moment. So it's just a little tip really for social media.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think now it's full steam ahead, you know, positivity, speaking about exactly what you will doing with clarity and confidence. Great. Well, thank you so much. That was really, really useful. I hope our venues and everyone that attended found it useful. For me, key takeaways from what you've all discussed, I think, was speaking to the client and noting down what their expectations are so you can match them exactly, empowering your teams so that they come back and can sell with confidence, and to streamline that whole customer process kind of from scratch using tech to effectively put it together basically and deliver. So yeah, they're my takeaways, but thank you so much for having us. Like I said, the next event with Matthew, he's got a panel speaking on the 16th, so 2 weeks today at 3 o'clock. But Jennifer, Becky and Ryan, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Thank you.